One of the coolest insights that we've had is that we find the most interest from couples in life transition points. And that's we found is interesting because it kind of opens up a little breathing room where it's not about you being bad with money. You're like, it's actually normal. If you're getting married and combining money, if you're buying a house, if you're about to have a kid,
right?
You've never dealt with that before. So of course, it's okay to want more support. And so even though of course we'd love for it to not be taboo to talk about money and wanting more support, we're actually finding that those life transition points create a little breathing room to say, actually, I've never done this before, and it's okay to want help. And we hope that those will continue to be moments where people just raise their hand and are like, does anyone just want to help? Make sure I'm okay. So we've just loved working with couples on that transition point, especially, and just saying, like you've never done this before, of course.
You're going to love our guest today who co-leads Generosity Bay Area. Her name is Diana Shaw, and she has quite the story to share with her background and what she's doing today. I love her heart, and I love the aspect of time, talents, treasures that she has chosen to invest in right now during this season. So stay tuned and you'll get to choose which of those three she's given her life to at this time. She's amazing. So thanks for being here. I know you're going to love her story. Welcome back to the Generous Girl podcast. I am joined in the studio with Diana Shaw. She is an incredible entrepreneur, and she and her husband lead Generosity Bay Area. And that is an incredible nonprofit helping to unleash generosity in the Bay Area. And she'll tell us all about it. But she has an incredible bio. She's a Harvard grad, and she and her husband are really trying to scale this company called Opto. And Opto is the first AI-guided financial coaching platform for couples. And it's rooted in the conviction that money conflict is really a relationship problem, and that healthy finances start with honest conversation. So she has a lot of practical insights. She and her husband have been married for 5.5 years. And I just thought she'd be the ideal guest for the Generous Girl podcast because she's living generosity and creating it with AI, sharing it with the people in her church and the other members of Generosity Bay Area. So I'm so happy to have you here on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Kim. It's such an honor, and I've gotten to get to know some of the other guests, and I just feel like I'm amongst giants, which is really sweet.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to watch your vision unfold of what you're trying to do with Opto. So let's start there. Why don't you unpack for the guests more about Opto and why you felt called to create this company?
Yeah, I'd love to. So like you started to mention, Opto AI is the first AI-guided financial coach for couples. And the story really started with my husband and I's own story. We both worked at Capital One. We were off in business school, and we're like an amazing team. We were newly married, and money just became really hard to manage. And like we're spreadsheet junkies now, like we could get into the numbers. And over time, we're like, why is this so hard? And what we started to learn was just that we grew up with different money stories, different money experiences. Money meant and represented different things to us. So while we were debating whether or not we should go on a trip, really what was happening in the background in our heads was totally different narratives playing out and priorities we were trying to push for. And really in business school, the thing that was an aha moment for us, actually there were two things. One is we went on a journey of generosity, which are these generosity retreats hosted by Generous Giving. And after hearing story after generosity, like a light bulb went off for us. Like, man, like that's what it feels like when you're a couple and can really be aligned and just be moving towards the same vision together. But it takes work to get there. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is we went to marriage counseling for money. And we were like, the most important thing to us is our relationship and our marriage. So let's go get extra help and just more space to talk about it. So over the last few years, we've just wanted to make that alignment piece more accessible. Therapy is amazing. It can also cost a lot of money. And you might need it at like 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night, if you're in a heat of debating something on your budget. And so we just really wanted to make that alignment piece more proactive, more accessible. And really the biggest heart behind it for us is that two people bring complementary things to the conversation around money. And that it's not a matter of battle of the wills, and it's not like one person brings more than the other person, but how do you learn to appreciate those differences around money?
That's wonderful. So tell us more about, it's 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. You're having this discussion. Tell us how AI plays a role in your company and how it would help that couple.
Definitely. So our software right now has two different options, actually three options you could do. One is you could go through predefined topics and courses. We can label it the premarital course right now, but it can really help anybody. But just how to have bite-sized conversations, maybe 10 minutes. And we've designed it so each person can have their own reflection. But you can also, this is the second part, you and your partner sit down, you're like, I just can't, this thing's really hard for us to navigate. You can join a session and it can listen to you both talking to each other. And it can parse out your voices. And its goal is actually, we've wired it to really lead with positive intent, lead with grace, like a lot of biblical principles, even though it's not explicitly Christian, and to really just ask questions. And my husband and I have actually done this a couple of times. And there's something magical when you have almost this third party in the room. It's a little neutralizing. So with the goals within 10 minutes, you kind of walk through, how are you feeling? How do you have a better understanding of, two worlds being brought together? And then it prompts you with a few next steps of like, what would be most helpful for you guys as a team? So the whole goal is at 10 p.m. Tuesday night, instead of feeling like tug of war of like, I just need to put my foot down, you both have a neutral space to come to together and say, okay, we're going to figure this out together. How do I try to understand my partner a little more? How do I understand what's happening to myself? I feel like half the time we don't even realize like why we might feel anxious about something, fearful. And so really it's not to give the answers, but to unlock the answers and to create that neutral common ground for a couple as well.
So is it super nice, like how ChatGPT is? I think ChatGPT is so empathetic. Wow, Kim, that sounds so hard.
Ironically, it started more like that. And that was some of the first feedback we got. We're like, it's too nice, man. You need to be a little more tough love too. So we've actually, we're trying to scale that back a little bit. But I think what we want to point out, we have trained it to be both like acknowledge the positive, but call out the limiting factors or the thinking traps or unhelpful patterns you maybe. So yeah, but that was actually feedback. We're like, this is too nice. I need something.
Okay. So this is just like an outsider question. So how do you monetize a company like that? So let's just say it goes amazingly well and you've got all these couples that are using it. Like, are they paying for that in terms of a subscription, or is there a free version, or how?
Right. Let's say this goes really well. Yes. So we hope that there'll continue to be free versions available, and the cost of AI models is getting really great. So it's making it available that there'll be modules and tools we can make available for free. There are two monetization options we're looking at right now. One is if you want to actually have more of your day-to-day money management incorporated, that would be a monthly subscription model, which basically just covers the cost of securely connecting your bank accounts. And so you're not just talking about like these abstract, hey babe, like you want to go on a trip, but like our credit card, which should be like, that's cute. That goes to not being too nice. So like, that's cute, but you still have that credit card debt. So let's talk about that first. So that's one option. But the second option, which we find actually the most exciting, is optional connections to live coaches, like human coaches who are trained in different certifications and professions. And these are probably more like financial counselors and so what we found is that a lot of people often might be drawn to the idea of like, I just want like a 1 hour consultation with someone just to look over my shoulder, maybe just give me a little expertise. I don't maybe need like the full financial management, but we're buying a house. And if someone can just sit down for an hour and sit with us, I'd happily pay a one-off fee just to make sure, I know what I'm considering right now. Yeah.
Like a sounding board.
Like a sounding board. Exactly. And it's more of like, it's there when you need it. It's time boxed, one-off fees and that are manageable. And then there's that human connection that we think can be really powerful of saying people who are experts have a lot to offer as well. So while we want to bring AI to the table, we don't fully see ourselves replacing all these experts. We actually think that it's kind of a closer connection of like, oh, you're struggling constantly with this problem. Like, let's get someone in the room with you and just help really round this out and make sure you have all the support you need.
I think that's just wonderful. I hope it does very, very well. And I just love, I've got 4 kids, 26 to 32. So it's just remarkable to watch what they have access to compared to my husband and I when we were in that age range, married. And like you said, like if we wanted to have that conversation, we would need to pretty much sign up with a certified financial planner, and that person would manage our money. And then that would, we'd have to book time with him. But like even looking at, so we're talking right now about the financial side, but one of my daughters, Claire, just had our first grandchild, and who's now, the little guy is now a month old. But I know, so sweet. But, when I watch them, Claire and Matt, and all the access they have with ChatGPT, with raising a child and the knowledge that's available. And, instead of, for us, it was call one of our moms, or it was go to the pediatrician, or we had this book called What to Expect When You're Expecting. And so now to just watch this whole generation have just, when you're pregnant, different things that happen and all the data, it's literally changing everything and the way that we access it, what is our normal. So money is, we talk about the great wealth transfer. So many trillions of dollars are transferring over, changing hands. Much of that will go to women. And this is like just an entire field that all these, Merrill Lynch's and Chase, all these companies, Morgan Stanley's, like they're also keying into what's going to happen with women and the men who've, the husband has managed the money and has the relationship with the advisor, but now he passes away, the woman outlives him. And statistically, those women are changing advisors because they don't have that relationship. So all of what you're working on, I think, is so, so vital, not only for the health of the marriage, but just equipping each person and helping them understand. I had a guest on the show called Courtney Markley, who helps people understand your money mindset. And like you said, kind of what's behind your feelings and your decisions that sometimes is really hard to put your finger on. But I also love that, you talked about going to counseling. And I think I've shared this before on the show, but that's one of the reasons I think with Saddleback Church that church grew so much was because of the transparency of Rick and Kay Warren, who he said, we were on our honeymoon 3 days into our marriage. We couldn't, we realized we needed counseling. We couldn't afford it. So we put it on MasterCard. So his line is MasterCard saved our marriage. And, obviously we don't want to, be going into debt, but like the fact that he is then saying counseling was so essential and so needed, then everybody, all the 30,000 people hear that and go, well, okay, we have permission now to get a counselor, to get, somebody to help us with our finances. We get a personal trainer, we get a nutritionist, we, all these things. And I don't know why the money piece sometimes is so taboo, or parents raising kids don't talk about money at all, and what that creates. So it is very nuanced and it's very complex. And I think no matter if you marry someone if you're American and you marry another American, or you marry someone who's from a totally different culture overseas, or even just different culture here within America, it's always what was normal in your family is definitely not always going to be true for your spouse. And and you think it's normal. You think, everybody does this, but it's like, no, we never did that. So it's important to unpack, I think, all the layers of what's involved in the emotions too.
I'm so glad you mentioned that too. And two very quick things I'll mention is one of the best gifts I'd ever received is that my best friend in business school, she said, her and her husband from the first day they got married, go see a counselor once a month. And she said, it's the gym equivalent for their marriage. We're like, you go to the gym to stay healthy. Exactly. They go to counseling to stay healthy. And I was like, I was just so thankful that she normalized it. It was like, if your marriage is the most important thing to you, why would you not care, to invest in it and to push past the taboo nature? So that was a gift.
Totally.
And the second thing I was going to mention is on the money conversation front too. One of the coolest insights that we've had is that we find the most interest from couples in life transition points. And that's we found is interesting because it kind of opens up a little breathing room where it's not about you being bad with money. You're like, it's actually normal. If you're getting married and combining money, if you're buying a house, if you're about to have a kid,
right,
you've never dealt with that before. So of course, it's okay to want more support. And so even though of course we'd love for it to not be taboo to talk about money
Sure.
and wanting more support, we're actually finding that those life transition points create a little breathing room to say, actually, I've never done this before, and it's okay to want help. And we hope that those will continue to be moments where people just raise their hand and are like, does anyone just want help? Make sure I'm okay. So we've just loved working with couples on that transition point, especially, and just saying, yeah, like you've never done this before, of course.
Well, and having a child too is like you don't know how you're going to feel. So you think one way, and then you hold that baby, and you might feel like, or you're home for a few weeks and you think, there's no way I could do this. I really, how I'm wired, I need to go back full time, or there's no way I could go back. I need to stay home. Or maybe the baby has, is in the NICU. So many things are wild cards. And yet there is the prudent planning. I remember someone telling us, try to live on one income so that when you have options, don't over mortgage with the house, or spend too much on cars, because it's just, there's so many unknowns, and you can plan as much as you want, but you don't know.
No idea. Totally.
Yeah. Or you may have twins or triplets, all the things.
You never know too. And that's where I think the money conversation is so interesting, because it's more like a part of life conversations. Like rarely are people making decisions just about money. It's like, to your point, living on one income is partially, do you want to be a stay-home mom, or do you want to be working?
Right.
And so it's a factor, but it's not the only reason that's driving your decision. So if you can find more of that decision-making framework and alignment, money can play a role, but it's also not dictating like your decisions.
Right.
Actually, not be like worried about being fear-driven of like, oh, I'm always fearful of the future, and so I can never take a break. I can never start my own business. I can never stay at home. It's like, you can hopefully make it work. Money is just one part of it, but it's an important part, but not the only part too.
Totally. So, and life is so seasonal too. Like any decision you make, it looks like, okay, this is what we're doing, but it can really change. And I think the more we stay flexible and realize, okay, this new season, that worked for that time, but now this new season, and we have to adapt and go with the new whatever we're given. Definitely. Well, I'm excited to follow your company and watch it grow, and I just love the vision that you have. So let's transition and talk about the role that you and your husband play with Generosity Bay Area. Tell us about that group and how you were asked to lead it, and kind of what your aspirations are for that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So Generosity Bay Area, like you mentioned, it's a Bay Area based organization that's really focused around community building, around the message of generosity. So just a little quick story on how we came to find out about Generosity Bay Area. It was founded 6 years ago by Michelle Ruby and Henri Kastner, and they just really saw the Bay Area as this really special place. It's almost like the land of paradoxes, like incredible amounts of wealth and success, loneliness, and people looking for purpose, and people also feeling like they don't have enough. So it's actually a really like ripe ground for the message of generosity. And when we moved out here a few years ago, we went on our second Journey of Generosity retreat the first month we lived here, which was awesome. And at the end of that, they mentioned that there's this community of like-minded Christians who cared about transformative generosity. And I told all my friends, I was like, did you know it's mind-boggling to me that there's a group of people who love generosity. And it just meant so much to me that even as we went through the years and, work would be busy or these things, just every once in a while, we got to get together with a group around dinner, or maybe there's a evening event or a weekend retreat, and just have those reminders and that reorientation of pulling back to the message of generosity. So we've gotten very involved, went through, to a lot of great events, got to know the team. One fun thing, which I think I've got to mention before, when I first moved out here, I also was like, that sounds like a dream job. Like I never thought about working at them, but I was like, I want a job where you talk about generosity. And over this past year in the fall, we got to catch up with the leadership team, and they're going through a transition where a lot of the core leadership team was getting pulled in different directions. And to be quite frank, they were like, we don't know like what the future of it has. And we were at dinner and my husband and I almost mind read and we're like, we'll do it. And they're like, yeah, are you? And the cool thing, I think God had been preparing us for a while in the sense that we were already working on a startup. So I think already had organized a lot of our life, but it's our pre-kid era, mind you. Where we can take on, I'm starting to say we have venture babies. We don't have human babies, many venture babies, but we're like, we already are in this mode of like thinking about how to test different things and experiment and just try to see what lands and grow it. So we're like, why not do that with Generosity Bay Area and just make ourselves available? So thankfully we'd already known the leadership team for a long time. So they were excited to have us step in. And I think the really interesting part is just being open to saying, okay, God, like you've already planted the seeds. You've done so much work over 6 years of, hundreds, if not thousands of Christians who have gotten this message of generosity. Where would you have us go next? So we were just excited and open to see how God will have us serve. But the hints that we've gotten so far is that it'll be very grassroots and that technology will actually, as people who build software, that we'd love to actually merge that and use that. I'm like, can technology also unlock more of this organic community building and building that depth and connectedness? So we're just honored to serve and make our time available to the community in this way. It's changed our lives over the last few years. The least we could do is just say, let's continue to have that presence here and that stance and say, we want the Bay to be known for generosity. We don't want it to just be known for tech. It's already known for tech.
Right. That's beautiful. So how does that work? Do you have a certain number of churches that are already connected with Generosity Bay Area, and then they'll sort of raise their hand and host journeys of generosity or jogs? Or how do people in the Bay Area, or if someone's listening and they want to get involved, tell us how they could get involved?
Oh my gosh. If you're listening to this, please reach out. We would love to have you involved. So we have, most of it's just through individual connections. So while there are people affiliated with churches, and actually there are a few churches in the South Bay specifically that have been champions of jogs, but most of it is just people who catch the message of generosity and decide that they want to introduce that to someone in their community. So often it's someone who wants to bring their small group through these weekend retreats, maybe a board, if they run a nonprofit, they're like, hey, this would be great for our board members. Or at a tech company, you're like, oh, I want to bring my fellow employees to this. It's always the best version of it is when someone says, I have started to catch wind of this generosity message and I want to invite a small group of my friends to be a part of it as well. So all you needed to do is get a small group of people, 8 to 10 people, pick a date, and we'll help organize a 1 or 2 day retreat. The content's already created. It's a free event. And so it's very easy to convene, but the best part is when someone knows someone else and starts to invite them into that conversation space. And I'm sure, Kim, you know this so well. It almost feels too good to be true, where you're like,
it's free.
It's free. You're not going to ask me for money at the end. And I just get to spend time hearing cool stories about it. Like, it sounds too good to be true. And so we found that when individual members just reach out and invite their friends or their community group, that tends to be the most powerful space because there's trust already in those communities too. So very grassroots effort at this point.
And I've shared before too, as a facilitator, if sometimes you invite people and it's called a journey of generosity, but then they feel like, but I'm already generous. Like, why are you inviting me? Do you think I'm not generous? And it's like, no, I'm inviting you because you already are generous, but wait till you hear these stories, wait till you meet these people at the jog. And like myself, who facilitates, every time I facilitate, I walk in thinking, okay, I think my husband and I, like, we worked on this. We put a lot of thought and prayer into it. But then I hear the stories every time. I feel like we need to up our game. We need to, like, here's another way. Here's another, just incredible stories that are just so inspirational and just make you want to live your best life by being a steward and not an owner. Understand everything we have, we steward for God. And that is a blend of not just money, but time, talents, treasure. And I know, let's talk about that piece of it, the time, because I know in terms of your life stage with your husband, he's working full time, you're trying to build this company, you're leading Generosity Bay Area, but yet what you feel right now, most that you can give of yourselves is your time, which I think is so incredibly generous. So tell us more about how you landed on that.
Definitely. So good. Thank you for the question, because I guess I landed on it because it's the area I struggle with the most. And, over the last year, I started to realize there'd be these like small interruptions to my schedule. And I could just tell that deep down, I started to wonder, I'm like, if I'm that easily, thrown off that like, oh, I was supposed to use my time for this today and something interrupted it. Maybe that's the thing I'm holding on too tightly. And I started to realize that while we had started to get more comfortable with giving money, the time piece, like you can never get the time back. And there's like almost a sense of the time is, so precious. And when I decided to quit my job and go full time in the startup, every entrepreneur is like, they struggle to find time to sleep, to eat, to get a break. And so I thought, the thing that God really put in my heart is like, do I trust that God will direct and guide the startup wherever I want it to go? And so that's the way I found that, is to say, let me sacrifice some of my time and just make myself available. And like, again, in the season where that feels like no chance do I have free time, it's like the first fruits of my time. So every week I try to set aside a few hours to be available for people if they need prayer, if they just want a sounding board. And most of the time I'm saying, I don't have specific expertise, but I'm here to just support you.
Yes.
And just like maybe send words of encouragement to friends. And honestly, I felt like I knew I would give my time. I felt like it was always a gift for me. There was always something so special about connecting with people and meeting them on their journey that it honestly, while I thought it was going to be hard to do, after I started spending time with people, I was like, what a gift to be able to spend people and, just invite into their lives. So I feel like it was almost God pouring into me by saying, like, there's such a bigger picture happening and the world is not on my shoulders. The startup is not actually fully even on my shoulders.
Right.
So yeah, it's just kind of that message of generosity that when you give, you just like somehow still feel like you're receiving. And in the Bay Area where it's go, 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 it's climb the ladder, it's be the movers and shakers. It's very countercultural to say, I'll just sit with you and I'll just be with you for no agenda, but just to be here and to connect. So it's been really helpful for me. Yeah.
It's a sacrifice, it's a sacrifice of your time. And yet we always go back to on the show, you can't outgive God. So he's always like, test me. So you're like, Lord, I have no extra time. And then he's like, just watch how by you giving of the time, you'll be more blessed, to give than receive. And so, yeah, a great challenge for all of us listening right now. What is God asking you to work on or give? Is it your time? Is it your talents? Or is it your treasures? And we're all in different seasons, and God knows that, and he's aware of it, but he knows how much he's given us in all those areas. And then he also knows how he can multiply it when we give it to him. So such a great example of that. I love that.
That's so good.
Yes.
I'll just mention, I was reading the Ephesians 2:10 today. And my friends and I really kind of all latched onto the part where like God has prepared good works in advance for us. And I feel like there's almost an invitation that God invites us to things that he's already prepared us for. So to your point about the seasons, maybe we're strapped for time. Like he's not going to ask us to give what he hasn't already like prepared or like equipped us with. And I feel like there's such an invitation to freedom to like release that guilt and say, God's not asking me to give things he hasn't I can't give or I don't have to give. He's only asking and opening space for things he's already prepared for us and has called us to and called us uniquely to in this time and season. So just want to double down on what you're saying. There's a lot of freedom in what that looks like in a given day, in a given season. And it's just, yeah. And I think a lot of times as women, especially, put so much pressure on ourselves to get ourselves together first or to make more and then be like, well, God, I'll make more and then I'll give more. And God's like, I've already given you exactly what I've wanted to give you. Right. So just sit and receive and then give from that place. So
yes. And everyone I work with in my role with the National Christian Foundation of California, when they are able to say, when, we got married, we had nothing, but we wanted to tithe and did, and we gave away our first fruits. And God
Mhm.
has been so faithful over the years. Like, I haven't met someone who, everyone who shared that with me has seen God's faithfulness. So I definitely want to encourage the listener, if you're feeling like you just said, Diana, where maybe if we just made a little bit more, then we could be more generous and give more.
Yeah.
That's the trap that we fall in, because it gets harder and harder. The more we make, the more commitments we have. So it's just better to start when we have nothing as a married couple, and just start, carving it out and watching God literally. Like, my husband and I look back with 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. We don't even know how we had 3 weddings, 4 kids through college. I mean, it's literally a miracle.
Yeah.
But it's a testimony of God's faithfulness. It really, really is. Because, and it's also what we'd say, God math. Like, the numbers, they if you went back, I don't even know if they would add up, because it's like he multiplies things where you just have no idea what he's going to do.
So good too. And yeah, I think there's so much to just knowing, like whatever stories God gives us too, like none of us lack anything in that too, and I think that's something where kind of God doesn't measure our generosity the way I think we're almost tempted to do sometimes. And God just he cares more about our heart and all of it too. So when you feel like you only have like $2 to spare, or like 2 minutes to spare,
right.
Beautiful. Right.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just the comparison point. It's not helpful with the generosity part, because God loves it all and can use and multiply it all. To your point, it can be like $2, but God can multiply it to do wonders. So not to despise those like small beginnings or those small offerings, because God loves them.
Well, I've always heard the phrase too: men compete and women compare. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't. Like, it's so better that we're all cheering each other on rather than competing, because everyone's situation is so unique, and it's apples to oranges, and it's not all apples to apples.
Yeah,
so
definitely. Totally agree.
Well, I want to make sure before we wrap up that we have a chance to just touch on, I always love to have the, overcoming adversity piece of what would you say, you're so amazing. You've been to Harvard, you're leading this company and leading Generosity Bay Area. But I always love to spotlight like something that you feel like you came through that just made you a better person, that encourages the listener to take the next step in her own journey. So I just want to make sure we have time right now to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. So good. I think there's plenty of times that things I haven't done well, or things that were hard, or things that, there's just so many things. So what I like to say, a lot of times I used to think it was about connecting the dots. I'm like, I feel like life is more like mosaics. Like, there are all these like broken pieces and God makes them into something beautiful, but always a work in progress. I touched early on the going to counseling with my husband. So I'm glad I got to already share a little bit of that, because it's really important that we're vocal about that part of our story. I think the part that I've been very fortunate. I don't think I've had like these huge like challenges in the sense that a lot of people grow up like overcoming incredible obstacles. I think in my own life, what it's looked like more is this sense of like daily showing up and holding intention, this constant and complete work. And I think, even coming on this show, I was like, I don't know, like my startup could fail, GPA could fail, like all these things. And so it's not even like, I think that's where a lot of the work is that it's like months and months or years of saying, kind of starting to move past that tendency to just want to make it or to have success in certain areas, to feel like we're enough, to just say, actually, like today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have to hold 20 things in tension at the same time, to be a good spouse, a good family member, to show up well at work, to want to love God, and I'm going to mess up in 100 ways today, and to learn to receive and to be and to not, to learn to love ourselves as much as God loves us. I think a lot of my adversity it's actually like a lot of like my own self battle. I'm just saying
sure, we're our biggest enemy sometimes, for sure.
Totally. Where, anyone else could look at like those schools or those things and be like, well, surely you have it together. But like most days I don't feel like I have it together. And yet the invitation is not to keep trying to just get it together, but to actually say how to receive God's love in that, and to say, actually, all these things that I have chased after for years, the schools, the names, come up empty and like it'll never be enough. And so I think a lot of what I love to encourage women in is to say like, I'm honored to be here, not because I've done good things, but because I feel like a lot of the ways I'm probably like a lot of women listening of like, my story feels very incomplete. And I don't feel like I've gotten the accolades yet that would put me on, but I think that's where God like loves to work and show up. And those are all the unsung heroes. They're saying like, it's not about the titles. It's not about the like newsline successes. So I think there's like, I don't know. I've been doing a daily prayer with another fellow female entrepreneur, 70 something days at this point. We're like every day. And I think half the days we're like, it's so great. But half the days we're like, do we quit? This isn't working. Like, because you get rejected. I think we've gotten rejected from countless things or people have told us these are bad ideas, And so I think just for all the women listening, just to say, I think the biggest adversity is that daily decision to choose joy and to choose in the tension, in the waiting, in the messiness, in the chaos of life, to choose to receive instead of waiting to be good enough to receive love. I think that's the biggest like lifelong journey God's really brought me on. That to your point, I think the biggest thing that's been my own adversity is my own like unwillingness to receive that love or to say like, yeah, the love's there, but I still want to earn it. I still want to get there.
Right. Work and really hard.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like a tight fist, and God just like slowly is prying one finger open at a time to say, Diana, that's not the point. And I know those are good things, but I love you anyway. So yeah, if for any woman listening, if they think they can call me, I'll tell them I do not. My husband, he'll be like, I love her, but no, she's a mess. No, yeah, it's just everyone's story matters. Yeah,
totally. And, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier with our callings too, and realizing what you're doing, what we're each doing today, following Christ is a part of that calling. And it's unique for each of us. And maybe it looks like a person has scaled a $6 billion tech company, but maybe it looks like a faithful entrepreneur each day who knows if it'll ever scale, but you're doing what God has told you to do, wants you to do right now. And that is enough. And He's gives us what we need to, rest and resources and all of those things. And just kind of separating it from the world's definition of quote success and all those things, because really it comes down to, are we being faithful to what He's asked us to do? And that's it. That's all it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's so good too. And very last thing, I love that you brought that up, because that's our pastor here says the only definition of success is faithfulness. And I think that's where one thing I'm learning is not to rush past things just to try to tie a bow on it, because sometimes the faithfulness is sitting in that messiness or sitting in those like painful moments or hard moments where you're like simultaneously you have hope, but you're also grieving, or you like, want to be hopeful, but you're also like longing or lonely. It's like all those things happen at the same time. And I think like they said, like every day the answer is just to be faithful and to kind of just, make space for that to exist too, because like, and statistically, most companies fail.
Right.
You have to always remember, you're like, and God has purposes for it too.
Yeah.
So
I love it when you're following the company and you think, from all the brand awareness, they're so successful. And then the founder's like, and this is our first year of positive cash flow. And it's like 8 years old.
I know. And I honestly, I had something like, I think a month or two ago, someone reached out on LinkedIn. It's like, it sounds like the company is going great. I was like, from what, 2 LinkedIn posts that I sent as a Hail Mary. I'm so, meanwhile we were like in a big pivot. We're like, nothing's working. We're scrapping it all. We're going to change it. Totally.
Oh, that's great. Well, I just love that God has put you and your husband in the Bay Area. So much great work is being done there, and so many great individuals who change the world and want to change the world through their influence in a positive way. That is people located there. So I love that we can spotlight some of the work that's happening through what you're doing on the show. But before we conclude, anything else you'd like to add before we go to your Bible verse, book, and bargain that you'd like to share?
Oh man, thank you again for having me. I think
100%.
The last thing and I was praying about what to share about today too. I think one of the things that God's really impressed upon me that I just love to leave everyone with is just, I think I'm used to putting God in a box way more than I think about like, okay, God, use GBA, use Opto, use this. And I feel like there's a sense that generosity is like, there are so many big and small ways that like God can interweave and grow the things we do. So just to encourage everyone that like, it's okay if you don't even know like what, like, don't even have to limit generosity. Like, this is my generosity thing. Like, just whatever you have each day. That's the invitation I started to think more about. Just like, what do I have today? Maybe it's like a friendship that I'm just going to reconnect with someone.
Right.
Maybe, you just never know. So just to, just to kind of invite listeners to say like, you just be open to the amazing ways God can use you, but make sure you're receiving his love and generosity first. Cause I think anything out of a need to like be good enough by giving enough is just dangerous. A path that a lot of us are tempted to go down to. So just remember God loves you so much, and everything you have, if you make it available, like he'll blow you away. Totally.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's great. That's so good. And for the listener, GBA stands for Generosity in the Bay Area, in case they're wondering. Yes. Okay. What is your favorite Bible verse?
Right now, it's Philippians 2, 1 through 11, but I'll just read, if it's okay, the verses 6 and 7. I pulled it up to make sure. It talks about how Jesus, who by being the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. So I just loved, like, Jesus had it all and yet served. And I think the part that, like the very nature of a servant. And I loved the thing that stood out to me too, is that being made in human likeness too. And just that sense where maybe sometimes we're too hard on ourselves, and Jesus served and brought so much beauty by being human flesh like we are too. So just that sense of like, man, we get to serve. And there's something about our human likeness taking on that position that I feel like it's just the invitation every day to say like, I'll serve, not knowing what's going to happen, but that's exactly how Jesus came and was. So what a journey to be on the same path that Jesus came.
He was. That's great. Love that.
Yeah.
A book that you enjoy?
I have so many books. You can see in the background. I love books. I'll keep two. I'll keep it very short. So I just finished The Return of the Prodigal Son by Henri Nouwen. And how I've described it to especially a lot of my girlfriends, it's like hearing the gospel in totally fresh ears. And I think that's been hard for some of us who have been Christians for some time. And he reflects on Rembrandt's painting of the prodigal son. And yeah, it's just a sense that you sense that you're actually simultaneously both like the elder son who had bitterness and questions, and the younger son who's rebellious. And so just kind of reflecting on that in a whole new way, and that we all get called to become like the father, actually, who welcomes people back home. So Henri Nouwen's one of my favorite authors. Love him. That's a religious book. The favorite fiction book is called Recursion. If people like Christopher Nolan and like mind-bending novels, this is a good one. It's dense.
Okay,
it's 11 hours on an audiobook, but it's my favorite book of all time. And it's all about human relationships at the end of the day, but a lot of the really fun sci-fi plots along the way too.
So great. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And then your bargain.
Yes. I admittedly am not a great shopper, probably, but my favorite go-to bargain is actually, I am the biggest fan of the Libby library app. So getting books on Kindle and audiobook for free. And so what I found that I love doing is getting them for free. And then when I like them, I actually buy the book to still like make sure I'm extra supportive of the authors. But that way you just get to experiment with different books and
nice.
Put them on discounts, and then you can go buy the book and not overpopulate your shelf with books that you like that I haven't gotten to read yet. So
I forgot that Libby has the Audible option.
It's
nice.
That is, especially, people always have their like opinions on whether audiobooks count. I believe they count. I think you go through this.
Totally.
But I found it's great for on the go. It just brings so much joy for like doing the dishes or just those little things. Just pop on an audiobook, and that's been a really fun way or you just go for a walk and listen to books too. Right. So yeah, that's a great extra feature they have now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being on the show. Thanks for all that you're doing to spread the message of generosity and help couples with your company Opto. And it'll be so exciting to watch that company just continue to grow and to watch the work in the Bay Area with Generosity Bay Area continue to grow. It's a beautiful mission that God has called you to, and you're doing it and living it so well. So thank you for being on the show. God bless.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for listening. And yeah, just saying so much love to everyone listening too. I feel so blessed to be in like the presence of Titans who've gone before me. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.